Deep in the void of space, 41 light-years away, a small rocky world dances around a dim red star. This is TRAPPIST-1e, a terrestrial planet just a little smaller than our own Earth. In its home system, it orbits its host star TRAPPIST-1 at an incredibly close distance. Because its star is an ultra-cool dwarf, this proximity is actually quite comfortable. It exists within the habitable zone, holding the secrets of liquid water and a stable atmosphere. But today, we are going to tear it away from its ancient home. We are teleporting this alien world directly into the heart of our own solar system. We decided that placing it at its original distance from our sun would be a death sentence. At just 0.03 astronomical units, the sun would crisp this world like a piece of burnt toast. Instead, we will find a supposedly cozy spot for it in the orbit of Mercury. This orbit sits approximately 0.4 astronomical units away from the sun. This means TRAPPIST-1e is now 13 times further from its star than it was before. However, our sun is vastly bigger and hotter than its original ultra-cool dwarf host. Even in this more distant orbit, the alien world is suddenly receiving a massive influx of energy. The surface temperature on this exoplanet begins to jump to extreme and lethal levels. It wouldn't take long for the heat to penetrate every layer of TRAPPIST-1e. Within a matter of days, the once promising world becomes a scorching furnace. This change is a catastrophe for any hopes of finding Earth 2.0 here. Back in its own system, it was the most promising of its 7 rocky siblings. While some of its neighbors were frozen and others were boiling, 1e was just right. It possessed the gravity of Earth and the ingredients for life. But now, in Mercury's orbit, all of that potential is being stripped away. From Earth, this new arrival would be a spectacular sight in our night sky. It would appear as a dot in the sky, but far bigger and brighter than Mercury ever was. Even without a telescope, it would shine like a new dominant star among the constellations. Surprisingly, its presence here doesn't immediately wreck the gravitational balance of our system. Though it is over twice as massive as Mercury, it is still small enough to be contained. It might nudge the orbit of Venus slightly, but such effects would take thousands of years to manifest. So for us on Earth, the arrival is nothing more than a beautiful new light in the sky. But for TRAPPIST-1e, the nightmare is only just beginning. The heat has reached a tipping point where the oceans can no longer remain liquid. Within a few more years, every drop of water on this planet will boil into the sky. What was once a candidate for a new home is now a sterile, white-hot rock. Any life that might have existed in its underground lakes would be fighting a losing battle. But what if we could save it from this solar fire? What if we moved it to a location that felt more like its original home? We decide to relocate the planet once more, this time to the cold asteroid belt. Here, far from the sun's wrath, TRAPPIST-1e faces an entirely new set of problems. The sun is now just a distant, cold, bright star in its dark sky. But as the planet begins to settle, its gravity starts to stir the million-strong army of asteroids around it. We have escaped the fire, but we may have just invited a gravitational storm that will destroy the solar system's peace. TRAPPIST-1e now sits where Mercury once reigned, but it was never built for this level of solar fury. Back in its home system, this world enjoyed the gentle warmth of an ultra-cool dwarf star. Now it faces a star that is significantly bigger, hotter, and more aggressive. The atmospheric pressure begins to spike as the temperature climbs at an impossible rate. Within mere days, the surface of this once promising world becomes a literal oven. The vast oceans, which might have harbored the seeds of alien life, start to simmer. Bubbles the size of cities rise from the deep, turning the sea into a chaotic cauldron. Steam begins to choke the sky, creating a runaway greenhouse effect that traps even more heat. Scientists monitor the transformation, realizing the planet is losing its liquid water forever. What was once Earth 2.0 is now being stripped of its identity in the blink of a cosmic eye. The water molecules are torn apart by ultraviolet radiation, and the hydrogen escapes into the void. Beneath the thick shroud of steam, the crust begins to crack under the thermal stress. Any land masses are quickly scorched into barren, salt-encrusted deserts. The hope of finding a new home here vanishes as the last drop of liquid water evaporates. From Earth, this death spiral appears as a brilliant, steady light in the morning sky. It is far brighter than Mercury ever was, reflecting the sun's light off its new thick atmosphere. But this beauty is a mask for the planetary-scale murder occurring on its surface. The gravity of TRAPPIST-1e is similar to Earth's, which only serves to hold the heat in. Even the strongest extremophiles from Earth would find no refuge in this boiling wasteland. The planet's rotation might be tidally locked, creating a permanent dayside of molten rock. Superheated winds howl across the Terminator line, carrying the scent of sulfur and death. In just a few years, the transformation from a blue world to a burnt cinder is complete. We have witnessed the death of a candidate for life, but the experiment is not over. To truly understand the limits of this world, we must see how it reacts to the other extreme. If the fire near the sun is too much, perhaps the cold of the outer reaches will be kinder. The planet begins its journey away from the scorching inner circle. We are moving it to the asteroid belt, a region filled with the debris of failed worlds. Here, the sun is a distant, pale star, providing only a fraction of its former heat. The boiling steam that once choked TRAPPIST-1e will now undergo a second transformation. Snow, made not of water, but of frozen gases, begins to fall on the scorched plains. The transition is so violent that the planet's very structure seems to groan under the change. We are creating a frozen wasteland where a tropical paradise should have been. This is the price of celestial relocation, a world that never finds its peace. But TRAPPIST-1e is not just a victim, it is now a gravitational intruder. Its mass, so similar to Earth's, begins to warp the delicate orbits of the rocks around it. This is no longer just about the survival of one exoplanet. The presence of an Earth-sized body in the belt is a ticking time bomb for the inner planets. Every second it spends here, it gathers more debris, becoming a celestial wrecking ball. The solar system's ancient balance is beginning to fray at the seams. We have escaped the fire only to enter the frost, but a much larger shadow is now falling over the asteroid belt. We have escaped the fire only to enter the frost, but a much larger shadow is now falling over the asteroid belt. To offer TRAPPIST-1e a fairer chance, we have moved it from the furnace of Mercury to a new home between Mars and Jupiter. This region of space is famously known as the asteroid belt, a vast graveyard of millions of rocky fragments. Despite the myths of dense debris fields, the average distance between these asteroids is nearly 1 million kilometers. There is plenty of room for an Earth-sized world to navigate this silent highway of stone. However, this new position is 2.5 times further from the Sun than Earth's comfortable orbit. At this extreme distance, TRAPPIST-1e receives a mere 16% of the sunlight we enjoy on Earth. The warmth that once promised life begins to drain away into the insatiable vacuum of space. Almost immediately, the temperature on the surface begins a terrifying and irreversible plunge. The lush potential of this alien world is rapidly replaced by the stillness of a frozen wasteland. Every drop of liquid water, once the cradle for possibility, locks into a state of permanent ice. The oceans that might have teemed with life become massive, unyielding sheets of crystal. TRAPPIST-1e is no longer a candidate for Earth 2.0. It has transformed into a new, more distant Mars. If any primitive life existed in its lakes, it would be utterly obliterated by the encroaching frost. Only life hidden deep beneath the crust might stand a chance at surviving this sudden climate catastrophe. But the environmental death of the planet is only the beginning of the problems for our solar system. A world with the mass of Earth sitting in the asteroid belt is a gravitational time bomb. Initially, the celestial mechanics of our neighborhood would appear to continue as usual. But as millions of years pass, the persistent pull of TRAPPIST-1e would begin to manifest. It would start by yanking smaller asteroids out of their stable millions-year-old orbits. Its gravitational influence would grow like a cancer, spreading disruption across the belt. Eventually, this rogue gravity would start reaching out toward the inner planets themselves. The orbits of Mars and our own Earth would slowly begin to wobble and shift. Even worse, the presence of TRAPPIST-1e would start to irritate the king of our system, Jupiter. Jupiter is the gravitational anchor that keeps our solar system in a delicate balance. If the orbit of that gas giant shifts even slightly, every single planet is in mortal danger. A minor nudge to Jupiter could send Mercury spiraling on a collision course with the Sun. We are witnessing the slow-motion dismantling of the clockwork universe we call home. Of course, these gravitational ripples would take billions of years to reach their final, destructive peak. For today's inhabitants of Earth, there is nothing to fear from this frozen newcomer in the belt. It is clear that TRAPPIST-1e has no luck in our inner orbits or our outer belts. If we cannot find a place for this small world, perhaps a larger exoplanet would fare better. We need to look further into the cosmos for a planet that can truly hold its own against our Sun. Enter Kepler 442b, a heavyweight among rocky planets known as a super-Earth. This world is 1.3 times the size of Earth and packs over double our planet's mass. It is a world on steroids, and we are about to drop it right into our spare rooms. Back in its own star system, it was the king of its domain, orbiting in a perfect habitable zone. But our G-type sun is far more aggressive than the cool star this giant is used to. As we move this super-Earth into position, we are not creating a paradise, but a monster. The delicate orbital lines of our inner worlds are already starting to bend under the weight of this new arrival. Something is beginning to stir in the gravitational heart of our system, and the balance is failing. The presence of TRAPPIST-1e in the asteroid belt is no longer a mere curiosity, but a growing threat to celestial order. Slowly but surely, the planet begins to exert a relentless gravitational tug on the millions of rocky fragments surrounding it. These asteroids are yanked violently out of their ancient, stable orbits by the newcomer's mass. As the centuries pass, The orbital dance of the entire inner system begins to lose its rhythm. Scientists on a distant Earth would monitor the subtle wobbles in Mars' trajectory with increasing dread. But the most terrifying change is happening much further out, where the king of planets resides. Jupiter, the gravitational anchor of our solar system, feels the persistent ghost of TRAPPIST-1E's pull. Even a microscopic shift in Jupiter's massive orbit is enough to send shockwaves through the entire system. This subtle nudge acts like a falling domino in a celestial chain reaction. Without Jupiter's steadying hand, the inner planets begin to drift toward uncertainty. The gravitational stability that allowed life to flourish for billions of years is evaporating. Deep in the heart of the asteroid belt, TRAPPIST-1E continues its silent, destructive work. Collisions between displaced asteroids become a frequent and spectacular occurrence. Some of these stray rocks are now being hurled directly toward the Sun, crossing Earth's path. Every year that passes increases the statistical likelihood of a planetary impact. The orbital mechanics have transformed from a clockwork masterpiece into a chaotic mess. We are witnessing the slow-motion dismantling of our celestial home. Jupiter's moons, usually so orderly, begin to experience tidal stresses like never before. The Great Red Spot seems to churn with a new, erratic energy as the planet's core reacts to the pull. Far beneath the clouds of the gas giant, the metallic hydrogen core feels the shifting balance. How long can the system endure this foreign body in the asteroid belt before something snaps? Mercury is the first to show signs of a truly catastrophic orbital decay. The smallest planet is being tugged toward a fiery end by the shifted weight of the system. Earth's seasons are becoming unpredictable as our own orbit elongates into an ellipse. The delicate Goldilocks zone we call home is shifting right beneath our feet. TRAPPIST-1E remains a silent sentinel, uncaring of the havoc it wreaks. It has turned the asteroid belt into a staging ground for planetary destruction. Jupiter's pull, once a shield that protected us from impacts, is now working against us. The very forces that built this system are now tearing it apart. Every collision in the belt creates more shrapnel, increasing the density of the death zone. Mars is being nudged closer to the belt, risking a catastrophic encounter with the exoplanet. The gravitational influence of the intruder is growing stronger as it clears its path. We are watching the birth of a new, more chaotic solar system. Mathematical models suggest that the current configuration cannot hold for more than a few million years. The stability we took for granted was always a fragile thing. Jupiter's gravity is starting to whip displaced asteroids into the outer system as well. The threat is no longer localized, it is systemic. Mankind's cradle is being rocked by a hand from a distant star. The time for observation is passing, and the time for consequences has arrived. Just as we begin to grasp the threat of TRAPPIST-1E, an even more massive shadow begins to fall across the inner worlds. The cosmic shadow deepens as a new titan enters the inner sanctuary of our solar system. We are now witnessing the arrival of Kepler 442b, a world nearly twice the mass of our own Earth. Scientists have long labeled this exoplanet as a super-Earth due to its composition and size. But as we drag this behemoth into the scorching proximity of our Sun, its identity begins to warp. The gravitational pull of the Sun grabs hold of Kepler 442b with a violent, invisible grip. In this new orbit, the planet is no longer a candidate for life. It is a victim of stellar fury. The sun's radiation begins to strip away the outer layers of the planet's protective gases. Temperatures on the surface skyrocket as the greenhouse effect takes a lethal turn. We are witnessing the birth of a super Venus, a world where the atmosphere itself becomes a furnace. The pressure at the surface builds until it is hundreds of times greater than what we feel on Earth. Beneath these clouds, the landscape is a nightmare of liquid metal and burning stone. The planet's massive gravity keeps this hellish atmosphere pinned down, refusing to let the heat escape.
Winds whip through the acidic haze at supersonic speeds, carving the land into sharp, lethal shapes.
Every second, the planet absorbs more energy than it can ever hope to radiate away. But the physical destruction of the planet is only the beginning of the catastrophe. Kepler 442b's immense mass acts like a gravitational wrecking ball in this tight orbital space. Small Mercury, already a fragile world, feels the first tremors of this new neighbor's presence. The stable orbits that have existed for billions of years are suddenly beginning to unravel. As Kepler 442b settles into its new home, it begins to push and pull at the very fabric of the inner system. The planet is a beautiful monster, draped in clouds of acid and fire. Its density is so high that its core must be a solid, metallic sphere of incredible proportions. This core generates a magnetic field so powerful it captures solar particles in a deadly dance. Any probe we might have sent to investigate would be crushed into a pancake in milliseconds. The transformation is complete. The Earth-like dream has become a solar system nightmare. We look back at our own Earth, realizing how delicate our balance truly is. Kepler 442b doesn't just sit in its orbit, it dominates it. Its year is short, racing around the sun at speeds that defy imagination. This speed creates tidal forces that flex the planet's crust, triggering constant volcanic eruptions. Plumes of sulfur and ash are thrown hundreds of miles into the thick atmosphere. The very air on Kepler 442b is a toxic soup of sulfuric acid and carbon dioxide. There is no respite on the night side where the heat remains trapped by the heavy clouds. This super Venus state is a stable equilibrium, one that could last for billions of years. It stands as a monument to the destructive power of stellar proximity. But the real danger lies in how this giant interacts with its siblings. The gravitational resonance between Kepler 442b and Venus is starting to grow. This resonance could eventually eject smaller planets from the solar system entirely. We are witnessing a slow-motion car crash on a celestial scale. The inner solar system is no longer the peaceful neighborhood we once knew. Kepler 442b is just one piece of a much larger, much more dangerous puzzle. As the inner planets scream in gravitational agony, a cold, dark terror is waking up in the asteroid belt. The arrival of Kepler 442b marks the beginning of a slow-motion catastrophe for our inner solar system.
This super-Earth is not just a passive observer. Its massive gravity acts like a wrecking ball in a glass house.
At first, the changes are so subtle that they are nearly impossible to detect from the surface of Earth. But beneath the surface of cosmic calm, the orbital paths of the inner planets begin to stretch and warp. After only a few thousand years, Kepler 442b's relentless pull starts to nudge Mercury out of its ancient path. Venus, the morning star, finds itself caught in a tug-of-war between the Sun and this new, heavy intruder. Even Earth is not immune to the influence of a world twice as massive as its own. As the millions of years grind on, these tiny nudges accumulate into significant orbital shifts. The once stable clockwork of our solar system dissolves into a chaotic orbital mashup. This instability creates a high risk of catastrophic planetary collisions. Mars and Earth could find themselves on a direct collision course, leading to total annihilation. Any life remaining on Earth would watch as its neighbors grow larger and more menacing in the night sky. The gravitational presence of Kepler 442b acts as a cosmic catalyst for this destruction. It is possible that the inner solar system would eventually be cleared of all its original planets. Some planets might not collide, but instead be flung out into the freezing depths of interstellar space. This process of orbital ejection is a common fate for planets in unstable multi-star systems. For Earth, this would mean a slow death as our atmosphere freezes and the oceans turn to solid ice. The sheer mass of Kepler 442b ensures that no stability can ever return to the inner solar system. Every day would be a gamble as gravity tugs at the very foundations of our world. The solar system we knew for billions of years would be unrecognizable in a mere fraction of that time. The inner planets are trapped in a dance of death, led by their new, massive neighbor. There is no way to stop the gravitational chain reaction once it has begun. We are witnessing the literal unmaking of a planetary family. Even if a collision doesn't happen, the climate of Earth would be shattered by its changing distance from the Sun. One moment we might be in a deep ice age, the next in a global furnace. This is the price of inviting a super Earth into our delicate celestial balance. We would be forced to watch our cosmic home dissolve into a graveyard of worlds. The gravitational waves from these movements would ripple throughout the system. Even the asteroid belt, already disturbed by other exoplanets, becomes a shooting gallery. Impact after impact would scar the remaining surfaces of these dying worlds. The solar system is becoming a place of chaos and random violence. Kepler 442b remains the anchor of this new, terrifying reality. It has successfully transformed the inner solar system into its own private domain. Earth's story, once a tale of life and stability, is now a footnote in a cosmic disaster. Humanity would have to find a way to escape this orbital trap or face certain extinction. But as we look outward for safety, we find that the outer solar system is no longer a sanctuary. The gravitational chaos is spreading like a virus through the orbital planes. The super Venus has set the stage for a total systemic collapse. We are running out of time and places to hide. As the inner planets scream in gravitational agony, a cold, dark terror is waking up in the asteroid belt. Far beyond the familiar orbits of our inner planets, a new and frigid guest begins to materialize within the cluttered expanse of the asteroid belt.
Known formally as Ogle 2005 BLG 390LB, this exoplanet is a massive heavyweight, boasting 5.5 times the mass of our Earth.
It is a world of absolute zero, where temperatures plunge to a bone-chilling 50 degrees Kelvin. Scientists discovered this distant wanderer using gravitational microlensing, measuring the way its mass bends the light of stars behind it.
Because of its distance, we are uncertain if Ogle is a massive rocky super-Earth or a small frigid mini-Neptune.
For the sake of our experiment, we will treat it as a giant rocky sentinel placed right between Mars and Jupiter. At this new location, the planet receives significantly more sunlight than it ever did in its original home 21,000 light-years away. Even with this extra warmth, the surface remains a lethal frozen desert, reaching only -200 degrees Celsius. Over time, the sun's persistent rays begin to cause the surface ice to sublimate, turning solid gas directly into a thin, ghostly atmosphere. But the real danger isn't Ogle's climate, it is the planet's immense gravitational signature. Within just a few million years, this super-Earth begins to act like a gravitational wrecking ball within the asteroid belt. Millions of asteroids are yanked from their stable orbits, falling inward toward the Sun in a chaotic spiral. Some of these space rocks take dangerous detours, finding themselves on a direct collision course with Earth. Humanity's weather forecasts would shift from sunny skies to a 70% chance of total planetary extinction. There are over 1 million asteroids in that belt at least 1 kilometer wide, and Ogle is flinging them all toward us. One by one, these mountain-sized rocks begin to strike our atmosphere, trailing fire across the sky. The impacts would be faster and more disastrous than the event that wiped out the dinosaurs. As the asteroid belt disintegrates, the gravitational influence of Ogle begins to reach for the planets themselves. Within tens of millions of years, Ogle's mass would destabilize Mars, sending the red planet into a wobbling, unpredictable path. Earth is next in line for this orbital sabotage, threatening to pull us either into the sun or out into the freezing dark. The solar system is no longer the balanced clockwork we once knew. It is now a site of cosmic demolition. Ogle 2005 BLG 390LB sits at the center of this carnage, a massive icy king on a throne of broken asteroids. Yet even this massive super-Earth is a tiny speck compared to the next monster entering our neighborhood. From 400 light-years away, a titan known as J1407b is about to claim its territory. This planet is 20 times more massive than Saturn, a gas giant so large it blurs the line between planet and star. Its ring system is 200 times wider than Saturn's, stretching across the sky like a celestial tapestry. We place this super Saturn in the empty space between the orbits of Saturn and Uranus. From Earth, these rings would be so massive and bright that they would dominate the night sky even without a telescope. But the beauty of the rings hides a violent gravitational reality for the outer planets. Over millions of years, this supergiant would begin a gravitational dance that could destroy the moons of Saturn and Uranus. Smaller, icy bodies in the distant Kuiper belt would be sent hurtling inward, further increasing the bombardment of Earth. If we dared to send a probe to explore these magnificent rings, it would face a journey through a literal minefield. Traveling at thousands of kilometers per hour, a single impact with a mountain-sized ring rock would vaporize any spacecraft instantly. Within these rings, J1407b likely harbors hundreds of moons, some potentially larger than the planet Mercury. If these massive moons were to cross paths with Saturn or Uranus, the resulting collisions would be cataclysmic. Even a slight nudge from J1407b could disturb Jupiter, the heavy anchor that keeps our entire solar system in balance. If Jupiter's orbit shifts, the delicate harmony of the inner solar system will shatter forever. Over hundreds of millions of years, these tiny changes will accumulate until the Earth itself begins to wobble and freeze. The invasion of the exoplanets has turned our once peaceful home into a cosmic battlefield where only the massive survive. As the foundations of the outer system crumble, an even more terrifying possibility emerges. What if one of these giants replaced our very own moon? As the foundations of the outer system crumble, a shadow larger than any before begins to stretch across the void. This is J4007b, a cosmic titan that makes our beautiful Saturn look like a mere pebble in comparison. We place this monster at the same distance from us as our own moon once sat. The sight is not one of beauty, but of immediate and absolute atmospheric terror. Its ring system spans over 120 million kilometers, wider than the distance from Earth to Venus. If J1407b were at our doorstep, its rings would be so bright they would turn night into a perpetual, dusty twilight. But the visual spectacle is nothing compared to the gravitational devastation this mass would inflict. Earth would no longer be a planet, but a victim of tidal forces that would shred our crust like paper. To save our world from total destruction, we must move J1407b further out into the domain of the gas giants. Even in the outer reaches, its presence is a wrecking ball to the delicate celestial clockwork. Saturn's own rings begin to warp and fray as they are tugged by the superior mass of the newcomer. Moons that have orbited their hosts for billions of years are suddenly flung into deep space. The sheer weight of J1407b begins to drag the outer planets into a deadly gravitational dance. Our solar system, once a model of stability, is now a chaotic arena of colliding worlds. We realize now that the perfect balance we took for granted was a fragile miracle. J1407b settles into its new throne, the undisputed king of a broken and unrecognizable solar system. The inner planets are gone, swallowed by the sun or cast out into the freezing dark. Silence finally returns to the void, but the music of the spheres has been permanently altered. The exoplanet invasion is complete, proving that our home was only ours as long as the giants stayed away. In the end, we are left with a new cosmic order, one where the rings of a Titan define the horizon of our history. The story of our solar system has ended, and the era of the exoplanet kings has truly begun. We have witnessed the impossible, and the universe remains as vast and terrifying as ever. The balance is restored, though not to our favor, in the cold and beautiful machinery of gravity. This journey through the shadows of other worlds concludes here, beneath the rings of the new master. The legacy of Earth is now written in the dust of a ring system that will last for billions of years. No more worlds will be moved, as the gravity of J1407b has locked everything into a final, frozen embrace. We were but a temporary chapter in a much larger and more violent celestial epic. To see J1407b is to see the true power of nature's architectural ambition. The silence that follows is the only remaining witness to the destruction of our home. From the boiling oceans of TRAPPIST-1e to the rings of this giant, the invasion has rewritten the stars. Gravity is the ultimate ruler, and it has spoken with the weight of 1 billion suns. This is the end of our world and the beginning of theirs. May the new solar system find its own harmony in the eons to come. Our journey through this hypothetical nightmare concludes with the ultimate cosmic reality. We are small, but our imagination allows us to touch the edges of the infinite. The destruction is complete, and the closure is absolute. Farewell to the solar system we once knew. The rings of J1407b now serve as the final monument to a lost world. The exoplanet invasion has ended, and the universe is quiet once more. Our simulation ends here, in the permanent shadow of the giants.